Is when I came from Michigan and left Mom and Patty and Dennis and took the trip across the country on old Route 66 to come to Sacramento to start my work at Aerojet General, and that would have been in March, I believe, of 1960.
And you were driving by yourself.
Yes, I drove it all alone in that little 57 Volkswagen, which performed remarkably along the highway. And I got into Sacramento.
But talk about that. How was that trip by yourself?
The trip was a combination of excitement and lonesomeness because I was leaving the family and knowing I was leaving them, and a lot of contemplation. And it was a trip of one only remarkable thing I can remember that I was so impressed with was coming down through Flagstaff and seeing Boulder Dam in Las Vegas at night. And I did a lot of night driving. I drove probably 15 hours a day. I made it in about 2.5 days or 3 days. Went pretty fast all the time. But anyhow, that was one of the most remarkable sights I'd ever seen, and I was so thrilled when I went into Las Vegas with a couple of quarters and won $25.
Wow.
And I just moved right on. Yes, it was back then.
So you moved on and you got to Sacramento. Did you immediately find a place to live?
I immediately stayed in a hotel and then found a place to live within one day. I had an apartment locked in with a great guy named Frank, and I can't think of his last name. But Frank, I met him in the line there, and we both agreed to share an apartment, and come to find out he's a wonderful Catholic gentleman from Colorado, and what a great time we had. And we stayed in there 3 months till I had to go back for Father Larry's ordination, and then pick up Mom at the same time, Mom, Dennis, and Patty. And before I did that, I talked to Mom on the phone, not a lot, because we didn't have a lot of money at that time for long-distance calls, but I talked to her about buying a home, or renting a home. And that was on Laurel Oak Way, and I told her the kind of home it was, and then she could ship the furniture all out, and I think Mom handled all the furniture from that end, if I recall.
Did you pack it?
The packing and everything. Yeah.
And then it got moved out.
Moved out, and Mom had to sell the house, and then move in with Nana, and
You did that all on your own, Mom?
yeah,
Wow.
with 2 babies.
So then you got to your house, Mom. Come here, Mom. You got to your new house. You flew into Sacramento, got to your new house. Tell me, what did you think of it when you first saw it?
It was really neat. I enjoyed it. It was a nice house.
Dad did a good job?
Nice neighborhood. Real hot. Hot, hot, hot.
When did you move? What was the month?
June.
June.
It was really
and Dad
hot.
did a good job picking the house out?
Yep. We didn't have too many choices.
And all the furniture was in.
Oh,
Everything was.
already
I
all
had done
set up.
all the relocating myself.
You unpacked?
Unpacked everything.
Did he do a good job, Mom, of unpacking? Do you remember if he had things put away fairly?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty
Oh,
much.
nice. Well, that's great. And then, so that was in June. You got to, did you meet a lot of neighbors between June and?
Yes, Dad already met neighbors before I got there. He met the mayors. The mayors and
They were all
I think Esther and Jay Nevinsell he
they were all
met.
anxious to see Mom.
They were all renting homes then.
Oh, nice.
So
So
it was
then,
nice.
you kind of slipped in. Were you happy? Did it?
No,
did
it's
the
very
transition go
lonely.
well?
Very
It
lonely.
was lonely.
Very,
How
very
was your
lonely.
first Christmas?
How was your first Christmas when
It
you
was
left
very
home?
lonely.
Okay. Yeah, it was very lonely. We cried a lot.
Mom and Dad both.
We thought, yeah, we cried doing Christmas cards. It was real sad.
Now it's making me sad.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Then talk about your first trip back to Michigan. How was that? When was that? When did you get to go back the first time? Did you take the train the first time? Do you remember that?
I don't remember. Was it the train or did I fly back?
You might have.
Yeah. No, I couldn't go back for that. I think it was the train. You got all your kids on the train and
So when you
locked up in a room.
I remember being on
Probably a couple years later. No, it wasn't because we had Peggy and I think we had Brian. Brian was a baby.
So that
It was a
in
couple
60.
years later. Yeah,
So you've been
It was
out
later.
there for 3 years.
yeah.
But did your mom?
But we had
visit
company.
you?
Yeah,
They all
Grandma
came out.
came. Grandma
Oh, that's
Jackson, Father Larry, Anchor. Yeah,
Oh,
Terry
that
came
was
with
nice.
Dick. Yeah, we had company, but only for 2 weeks a year.
Yeah,
It wasn't like we could see them as often as we see you kids now.
right. So, when they came to visit, what would you do? Is that when we do the beach trip?
A couple times we did the beach. We didn't do a lot. We played a lot of Monopoly. We didn't have money.
Right.
We went to Dairy Queen nightly. Kathy and Nana, Dad and I, and the kids, we'd go to Dairy Queen. And,
When did you move to Amalfi Way?
what year was that?
Well, it had to be.
would have been about
69?
63.
Yeah, because I thought I was born on Amalfi Way.
You were born on Laurel Oakway.
Was Matthew, or Brian born on
Brian was
Amalfi
born
Way?
on Amalfi
So
Way.
that was 63.
So we
That was your house, the first house you bought in California.
first house.
And then did all the Nevin-Zales and all of them move into that same neighborhood?
Yeah, they did. Nevin Sales moved a few blocks away.
Yeah,
They were over by Moore and Owen O'Neill.
yeah.
And of course, Chuck and Barbara Muir moved to Carmichael. They were just there renting for like
Right.
a year or two, and then everybody kind of
And
moved.
were you going to St. Mel's Church?
The whole time.
The whole time?
The whole
So
time.
that was the Catholic Church, and that, you became very active in the Catholic
Uh-huh.
Church
In St. Mel. Yeah.
and in St. Mel's. So, let's talk about, then, the train trips that we took from, anything remarkable happened on those train trips?
One time we hit something. I think we hit a car.
It was a Volkswagen. I remember.
57. No, I don't know, but it was a car. We hit a car once.
Yeah.
Yeah, that delayed us a while. It was
And-
kind of scary.
I remember, I know I'm not supposed to talk to you, but I remember, the thing I remember the most about those train trips was going into Chicago, because we never saw so many black people, and it was just amazing. I remember thinking, wow, not anything wrong with it, I just,
You just haven't seen them.
we had not seen so many, and I remember the smell of the train station, the locomotive, that smell. But how many train trips do you think we took?
2.
And then how many trips did we drive?
Probably 2, and all the time, well, I don't think we ever drove from Sacramento.
We never drove.
Never.
That
We
was
always
when
flew.
went to Cincinnati, I
We
think.
flew to weddings and a few things from Fair Oaks, but never drove.
So, Dad, I wanted you to tell us about the night, the few weeks before Brian was born, when you went out with your buddies for somebody's going away party, and you went somewhere. Oh, was that? Yeah.
Well, that was just a little thing that Bill Friedrich was leaving Aerojet General, who was a dear friend of the family, and that Sherry and Bill were always great friends. And we both decided, after having an afternoon luncheon for Bill, to go on up to Las Vegas. Not Las Vegas, pardon me, up to State Line, Nevada. Big casinos there. And we were gambling, and Mary Ellen at that time was approaching the point where she had to have the baby any day. And all of a sudden, I'm gambling at 11 o'clock at night.
Excuse me, did she know where you were?
No. And I'm gambling at 11 o'clock at night, and I get a statement, page over the entire casino, John Jackson, report to the office, casino office. And I thought, oh my God, Mary Ellen's pregnant, and she's going to the hospital. So I go up there, and there's Bill Friedrich laughing. He did it as a joke to scare me, and I'll never forget it, getting home at 4 o'clock in the morning and so happy to see Mary Ellen.
And
Still,
was she happy to see
yes,
you?
she was. She was not in labor yet, so she was thrilled that I had done that.
How
So
happy were you to see him, Mom? Loud.
don't throw that at me, Mary Ellen.
Yeah, Mom, tell us, how happy were you to see Dad at 4 o'clock in the morning when he never called to let you know where he was?
I was furious, Sherry was furious, and Yvonne McMahon was furious with all 3 of you guys for doing that. It was not a very thoughtful thing. And I was pregnant already, but I was due to have Brian.
Right.
You thought I was in labor.
And let's talk about some of the memories on Amalfi Way. What are some of your fondest memories, Mom?
Oh, just all the fun we had with all our neighbors. We had great times with the Jacobsons and our neighbors. We'd have parties weekly, dinner parties, dancing. And the kids all got along real well. You all went to St. Mills, and you kids all had fun. And we all got along well, all the neighbors.
Is there any party in particular that stands out in your mind? Any, any event that happened at a party in particular?
Which one are you talking about?
I have one of Brian, in which we had the big 4th of July party at our house every year, and I had a keg of beer there, and I came out. It was always on Saturday and Sunday morning. We're ready to go to Mass, and here was Brian out on the patio drinking out of that keg of beer, and we took him to Mass stoned. He was 3 years old. So that was one thing we remember. We kind of disguised it at church, but he handled it very well.
And what, Mom?
Well, we didn't realize he was in the beer till we smelled his breath at church, and he couldn't even walk up the aisle straight. Huh? What is wrong with you? Yeah, but we didn't know he had that much. He had quite a bit.
He likes his beer. And what about, Dad, whose idea was it to do all the Christmas caroling that we did?
Well, I don't know. It was just kind of a carryover, and we had our own lantern, and we had about 20 or 30, all of the neighbors. And we went around the other neighborhoods, which were different streets with different families, and we caroled every year, and we always came back to our house and had drinks and everything. But it was just a fun thing that we wound up as a tradition doing it every year, and it worked out great, man. It was a nice group. So we had a lantern, a regular Coleman lantern hanging from a staff, and sang.
Dad, tell me about our move then to Cincinnati. Do you remember that clearly?
Well, let's see. I remember we were then on Emperor Drive, which was a new another house that we had been there, and I remember Father Larry, Father Pat, and Father Terry all came at one time, and those were great memories on Emperor Drive, and it was just a fun house. We're only in there two.
Do you remember the American River?
The American River, and we'd go down there and goof around down there. It was just walking distance from our house.
I remember those.
And it was, breakfast with Father Murphy always came. And no, it wasn't Father Murphy.
No, Father Murphy.
Yeah, I forget, yeah.
Grinald,
No, I forget. But anyway, he was a pastor. Mary Ellen would remember. But another thing I remember is I did a lot of ministry with Folsom Prison at that time. And we had prisoners come over for breakfast and priests and everything else. So it was kind of a fun place. But, it's good for you, Tom Hamilton. Yeah, he was one of the prisoners there that we got out. But I gave my Volkswagen for 3 months and wound up back in jail, but I got my Volkswagen. But anyhow, it was just a fun time in Emperor Drive, and then we headed out to Cincinnati, and that would have been about 1969 or 1970, I think we went to Cincinnati, and that was 3 years. We used to love our trips back to Detroit from Cincinnati.
A year and a half.
2.5 years, I think. Well, okay, well. But anyhow.
Give me some memories in Cincinnati.
Well, I remember all of you were growing up then. You were getting to be, Dennis was a teenager, I think about 13 or 14, and doing all of his singing and stuff. And, of course, everybody dressed crazy back then. But the best memories I had was even barbecuing in the winter in Cincinnati, because we were so used to barbecuing. People thought we were nuts with our barbecue out there in the snow. But we just loved Cincinnati, and I just have the fondest memories of trips we made with down to see Father Terry in Kentucky and Virginia.
Thursday nights you came home and said kids were going to Michigan.
Oh yeah, we just take off on a spur of the moment and go up to Michigan for a weekend. Just loved it, and those were fun times. And surprised Nana and Grandpa all the time, so it was great. Yeah.
What did you used to say?
What would we say, Dad?
As we approached it,
Vote. Nana and Grandpa.
Vote was the street label. Yeah, as they got closer, that's what they'd chant, yeah. Anyhow, those were fun times.
And then, Mom, tell me, how happy were you to go to Cincinnati, Ohio, and then tell me the mixed emotions you had to come back to California?
glad to come back to California. I missed it. I love the weather here. We had fun in Cincinnati. We had nice neighbors, but it wasn't the same because those people were all from that area and they had their families nearby and we didn't, so we were kind of offsprings in the neighborhood. One good couple was Will and Ann Paw. They were good. I mean, Ann and Bill Paw. They were good friends of ours. And it was fun. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I was glad to come back here. It was really nice. I was looking forward to Southern California.
So, Mom, tell me about the trip that, did you and Dad come out here to find the house when we moved to San Diego, or how did that happen?
Oh, we all came in the station wagon. Terry and Mary Ann came and said goodbye to us. So they came on a Saturday night, I think it was. And we got up in the morning and went to church and went to Sambo's and had breakfast. And we were all packed with our crank-up trailer. And we said goodbye to them in the garage on Citadel. And we all got in the car, a dog, got in the car and headed to California. And it was a long drive. It was a long drive.
Where did we live that first week we got here in San Diego?
Oh, at the motel. It was a good 2 weeks.
It was that campground.
Oh, the campground first, yeah. And that was a good week and a half. And then we moved into a motel that had a little kitchen. And that was really living. Was it the Easy 8 then? I don't remember that. Yeah. But that was fun. And then we found our house that we bought on Reed Road, the first house. And that was nice. And it was big. The girls loved it. They had their own bathroom. And it was a nice big house. They had a pool table, our first pool table in the family room. And put a pool in. Enjoyed that house. Just sold it not too long ago.
And Dad, do you have some fond memories of that Reed Road house?
Yes, I do. I remember one great party we had with Ellie and Jim Elrots, and that was Ellie Rising, and Eddie and Rose Williams, and we all know the Williamses from St. Clair Shores. And it was the first time we really got together with all their kids and all of our kids. Each of them had about 5 or 6 kids. And our kids, we were 5 at the time among us, and boy, we just had a couple of very memorable parties there. And that's all I remember, Peg, and I don't want to get into the nude swimming by Chuck and I as old lifeguards.
Okay, I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Now, do you remember, I believe 2 of your son-in-laws came to visit you, or came to meet you on Reed Road. Do you remember those meetings at all? When you met Chuck and when you met Kevin?
Oh, yes, I do. And I had a tough time, with you young ladies and all your romantic things and all that sort of thing. And it was a tough time raising you 2 as teenagers. But, you had your differences. And we found out an awful lot years later about all the things that went on there that we didn't know about, such as visits to the graveyard, which was right behind by Patty, and you covering for her and all that sort of thing. We've heard a lot of different stuff about that, but it was, all in all, it was a great time on Reed Road, and we welcomed the opportunity to go into Whitehawk, which turned out to be a great move, too.
Yes, and do you remember that Christmas of 1978? Do you remember the spectacular thing that happened that Christmas?
I believe it was Matthew Bourne.
Yes, right.
And that was a very interesting, wonderful time.
Oh, no, we didn't. Tell the story about how you announced to all of us kids that you were pregnant with Matthew.
Well, that was a trip back to Michigan, and
Mom tells us.
yeah, Mom tells the story better. She knows the details.
Okay. It was hard to tell my teenage kids that I was pregnant, so we figured on the way to Michigan, we're taking our vacation, in the motorhome, the Toyota, with the 5 kids, that we would tell the kids on the way, because we had to tell Nana and Grandpa and Grandma and Grandpa that we were going to have another baby. And all the way there, Dad kept saying about 5 times a day, "Are you going to tell him now? Are you going to tell him now? When are you going to tell him?" I said, "Just wait. I've got to think of what I'm going to say." Well, for 5 days, that's all Dad kept saying. And we're in Michigan now. 5 days later, went to a McDonald's to have lunch. We're probably 3 hours from Nana's house. And Dad said, "Well, you got to tell him now because we're going to be there in a couple hours." So we pulled in the parking lot at McDonald's. And I turned around. I was in the passenger side, and I turned around to the kids. And I said, "I have something to tell you." And Patty and Peggy had been listening to us say, "I'll tell him. Don't worry, I'll tell him." One of the girls said, "We can take it, Mom, no matter what it is. If it's serious, we can take it." And then I thought, oh my gosh, they think something's wrong with either Dad or I. And I just said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong. It's just that you're going to have a brother or sister." And Patty and Peggy started screaming in the motorhome, opened the windows and yelled, "We're having a baby!"
And we said, "Are we adopting?"
Oh, did you remember that part? Yeah. Because the whole way there, I guess they thought that we were sick and something was wrong with us, and it bothered them more than it bothered me. So, anyhow, that was a fun thing.
What did Tim think?
Oh, Tim was upset with that because he wasn't going to be the baby anymore. And he said, "Mom, does that mean I'm not the baby anymore?" And I said, "Yeah, Tim, I'm sorry. That's what it is."
Yeah.
So,
And then tell us how everyone in Michigan took that news.
well, they were all very shocked. "You're kidding. It's your age." Yeah, it was kind of a
So,
shock for
Mom,
all of us.
Kind of tell us what happened that night that Matthew was born, or that morning, well,
Oh,
22nd.
It was a long labor, and Dad was going to get to see the first child born, and went to the hospital, and they decided I had to have a C-section. And the nurse I had was really, really nice to me the whole time, and when the doctor came and announced that I had to have a C-section, and the nurse was there, and the doctor said to John, he said, "I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to see your child born." And Dad said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll see the next one." And the nurse about clobbered him in the head because she was
That is one bit funny.
like I was going to have another one at that age. Yeah, right.
Oh, well, that was really nice. And then shortly after Matthew was born, just a couple years later, is when we moved to the White Hawk House, and we had some wonderful memories there.
Wonderful.
And probably one of the first big memories we had was Patty and Chuck's wedding. Dad, tell us how that was to take your first daughter down the aisle as she got married.
It was nothing but just the greatest happiness. We had everybody there. Father Larry was there, and it was just a wonderful celebration, and I just can't think of anything that was nicer. I do remember Matthew putting on a little deal there where he started crying as a flower guy or whatever he was at 2 years old or whatever, or 3, and he just panicked and everything. But I had a lot of friends from Mac there, and it was just a great wedding. It was our first wedding on White Hawk Road. Well, the first wedding in the family, yeah, but it was the first one there, and it just turned out beautiful, one of the greatest events ever. And it was just a wonderful mixing too of everybody. Of course, there was Mormons and Catholics and everything, but we just had a wonderful time together. And I remember Mom was there along with Aunt Claire, I think, and Aunt Frances.
No, that was at our wedding.
Okay.
That was our
But anyhow, there was some that there were some of the relatives were there. Yeah, It was just a great wedding. And then it wasn't 2 years later, we had another wedding with Peggy and Kevin, and another great one. But in between that, I got to say, one of the most memorable things was when Father Larry visited, and we built the wine cellar, and Father Larry helped me. And Father Dick Sear was another episode there where he finally died of cancer, but he was taking all of his treatments there, and we had a lot of the Dick Sear families there. It was just a wonderful time. And another major event there, of course, we all remember, and that's Father Pat's death, and that was something that we'll never forget. And just a quick overview. Pat and I stayed up the night before and watched Tara, 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 the movie on Pearl Harbor. Because Pat had suggested it because he had never seen it, and I never had seen it. And at 1 o'clock in the morning after the movie was over, we both enjoyed it immensely. He said, let's do that wall. And we worked on that wall in the morning. And we had more fun and laughter, and we went up to lunch and had greatest lunch with Mary Ellen. And we had real great beer. It was not Heineken. It was the original beer before they started making it from Austria anyhow. And we had more fun, and we went back down. I had to get more cement, and that was the last I saw Father Pat till I went to the hospital, and that's when he passed away. Brian was there and gave him mouth-to-mouth and everything, and then Marilyn called Chuck, and Chuck really participated significantly there, too, to try and help the situation. But it was just one of the... So those are the highlights, and that's it.